Hey, beloved ones, we're doing something a little different today because my husband is with me, and we're just gonna talk about something that we love pop culture wise, which is Disney movies. But we actually are going to talk about the Disney remakes and basically how much we love the originals and the ways that the remakes, in a lot of ways, didn't fully understand the strengths of the originals and why the remakes could have been better. So I'll go ahead and let my husband talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah. So I think that we've had a lot of interesting conversations. We actually talk about it quite a bit. And so we've been wanting to do a video just to kind of share our thoughts, because I feel like we have some interesting perspectives to share on why the unique ways in which these attempts at banking on nostalgia don't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's some lessons there for just how to honor a property or something, characters, story, world that people really love, and how to do it in a way that's respectful and not like, I don't know, cynical, I guess maybe is the right word.
Yeah.
Although I have some thoughts about whether it actually is cynical too. So anyway, all right.
So one of the strengths of many of the originals, first and foremost, is the music. And the genre of animation in general requires a big suspension of disbelief. So you already accept that there are musical numbers, and you accept that strange things happen and expressions can be crazy. And so both the animation and the musical elements are part of the magic of what makes these movies what they are. So I mentioned the music, but we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the animation first, as kind of the format in which that music fits.
Mm-hmm. I think that one of the things about the animation, I mean, obviously you have the great character designs. You got, people like Glenn Keane and the Bancrofts and all of these really iconic animators, Kirk Wise and Clements, Musker and Clements. And I think that these guys came along when the Disney Renaissance started, and really there's a great documentary called Waking Sleeping Beauty about like the 9 old men, right, and the transition between kind of the old guard of the Disney acolytes like that worked under Walt, and this transition, beautiful transition that we were actually listening to a Bancroft podcast recently. They have a great animation podcast, and they were basically saying that the Disney Renaissance started with Rescuers Down Under, right? Or was that after? That was after. That was after Little Mermaid.
Great Mouse Detective.
Great Mouse Detective, Little Mermaid. In that, so there's some forgotten. It's not all Beauty and the Beast and Lion King and Little Mermaid. There's some other movies in there that that deserve some credit too. But I think that one of the things I notice about the originals is if you haven't seen some of these movies since you're a kid, go back and watch them, because you're going to be like, wow, I can't believe how short that movie was and how simple, right? And that's, this is a problem that plagues animation today, not just live action. But I've talked before about the sort of like 2.5 hour model for like making a blockbuster movie. And these movies are just so dang long. And I'm not saying that the Disney remakes are 2.5 hours, because they're not, but they're significantly adding 30 to 45 minutes to these movies, and yet it feels like there's nothing being added to them. Which means that to a certain extent, the people making these movies are not respectful of the audience's time. And I think that economy of storytelling, where you could get an hour 20, hour 30 tops, with these animated films, like most of them are under 90 minutes. They're 70, high 70s, low to mid 80 minutes long. And it's great, because you feel like you get this really, because animation is so expressive, I think you get this really great, you can tell a story through visuals and not through over explaining and not through complicated plots. And one of the problems with these remakes is they think that more is somehow better, or somehow that people want a longer movie, and the whole less is more economic model of storytelling that Disney kind of, and maybe like Hayao Miyazaki, go back, although some of his movies are very dense plot wise, but if you go back to something like My Neighbor Totoro, right, just the most simple story in the world, but it's maximum it's targeted maximum emotion. It just shoots straight for it, and it doesn't waste any time getting there. And I think that's really, really hard to do with live action. It seems like a lot of people are struggling to do that with animation these days. Animated movies even tend to be a little over busy and over explained, but animation, I think, has a particular knack for that economy of storytelling that's hard to replicate in live action, and I would say maybe even impossible to fully replicate.
Yeah, and I mean, these character designs are so expressive. I mean, you look at these animators and the making of featurettes, and you see them with the mirror in front of them, and they're doing their facial expressions. But like I mentioned before at the beginning, there's a suspension of disbelief that goes into animation, where a lot of things are possible in an animated movie that just even in live action where there are CG characters is just not. Our brains still kind of don't allow for what they're trying to do, and so. When they try to squeeze expressive characters, comedic action into a movie that looks photorealistic, it just doesn't work. For me, Lion King, the live action, which was still animated, just did not have the emotional impact of the original. When Mufasa dies and Simba cries out no, and when he cries out, help me, somebody, anybody, like you see the pain in his eyes, and you can make animated characters' eyes super wide. You can show tears, and these lions just look bored the whole time. And James Earl Jones sounds bored that he's having to re-record these vocals again.
Yeah, and it's funny is that they redid the song, the Circle of Life song was like they didn't re-record that. The guy that sang that vocalized part. And so I'm like, well, why didn't they do that with some of these other James Earl Jones in the original is so iconic, and that scene you're talking about is just an absolute one of the most gut-wrenching iconic scenes in animated film history. And it's just rendered completely inert, and it's almost but it's so weird. There's this double standard where they want you to go see this new thing, but yet they're like, hey, remember the animated original? Remember this? All these callbacks and references, even the same basic plot. And it's like, I do remember it.
Yeah.
Why aren't you remembering it? Or why are you remembering it? Why are you reminding me of this much better thing that you did? Which is why I think that the more these movies get away from the originals, you have something that's can be kind of effective. Like say, I don't think I've actually seen it, but I know that Pete's Dragon is a very different take. And that's not like a beloved classic, it's kind of a, if you try to watch the original today, you have a hard time sitting through the whole thing, I think.
That is not economy in storytelling.
No, that movie is long because it's a musical, and all musicals had to be 3 hours. Or something like Mulan, which has many, many, many flaws, is still nonetheless, I feel like they attempted to bring it in a different direction. And I think in the unique ways that one fails, I appreciate the effort in let's make more of a martial arts epic. Let's make something more adult. We're not going to have musical numbers. And people were mad about that. And I'm thinking, but if you want musical numbers, just go watch the original.
Yeah.
You're not going to improve upon that. Those songs are really good. So that's kind of my philosophy when it comes to these if you're going to remake it, you might as well. I would rather you reimagine it as something different. In the case of the newest one, Pinocchio, they did both of those things poorly.
Yeah.
The callbacks to the original were just, again, the economy of storytelling. That story is so beautiful. I don't know that that's like the gold standard masterpiece of the old guard Disney. Like, it's better than Snow White. It's better than, Fantasia's pretty good too. But I just think that there is something about that movie that really speaks to generations. They have the When You Wish Upon a Star, when you see the Disney logo, it's the thing. It's sort of like the Casablanca song on the Warner Brothers logo. It's like iconic. But then you're trying to make it different, but the ways that you're making it different, particularly with the ending, is so poorly done. But I don't think this is the part that I think there might be some disagreement on, depending on where you're coming from. Yes, these are cash grabs. Yes, these are nostalgia bait. But I think, even in a case like Pinocchio, you get a director like Robert Zemeckis, you get some really good production design, really good visual effects artists. I can tell that these movies, some of them at least. I mean, Jon Favreau is a great filmmaker. He's very passionate about what he does. I don't think he would make something like Lion King just to be like a hack or whatever for Disney. Although I have heard the joke that they made the trade-off, like, hey, we'll let you make Mandalorian if you direct our, because he did Jungle Book, which was a bit more successful at reinterpreting the original than Lion King. But I think that there is a lot of I don't always see cynicism with these remakes. I see some passion. I see some desire to replicate the story for a new generation. But it's a misguided desire because these stories don't need to be replicated. Just the originals exist. So just show your kids the originals, because no kid is going to go back and want to watch the new Pinocchio a second time because it's so boring. And it's over 2 hours. Again, 2 hours. What is wrong with you guys? So what did they add to the story? They cut the ending off at the knees. For those of you who haven't seen it, spoiler alert, but did he become a real boy or not? Who knows? That's so lazy. And again, but it fits with this sort of, it's the way that they made that one where they updated the messaging, where it's more about self-empowerment and less about responsibility. It's still a good message on its own, but it's just so overdone. I liked Pinocchio being kind of a jerk in the original. And I liked that his lying came up more than one time for one little sequence with his nose growing. And it sort of was just like, I don't know how these movies can feel rushed, but longer. It's like, oh, you rushed through that plot point. You rushed through that plot point. Well, why? So we could have an extended Pleasure Island sequence that was admittedly pretty cool and very visually interesting. But again, just from a story perspective, you're like, okay, how is this log ride thing supposed to work? It just feels very like haphazard and sort of thrown together. And again, maybe that's why it ended up on Disney Plus. But it's just like a particularly, and it's not terrible. It's just so forgettable.
Yeah.
And even with Tom Hanks, how can you mess that up?
Yeah, doing the same voice for Elvis, right?
Yeah.
Not exactly, but pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel like there's some magic to the original, and they don't always understand what made the originals great. The other thing that we haven't really talked about that I kind of mentioned, we're doing this on the fly, is the music for these original movies was just spectacular.
Yes.
I mean, you had Howard Ashman and Alan Menken writing together, which the songs they wrote together were just absolutely perfect. And you think about the complexity verbally of them, and they're not simple songs at all. They're not like, but yet they were so catchy and the characters were so memorable that I knew all the words. And if you go back and listen, like I used the word coterie in a Scrabble game, and I was like, it's in Aladdin, it's in Prince Ali. Like, it teaches kids vocabulary. But anyway, the other thing is that the performances of these songs were absolutely perfect. And if the actor or actress couldn't sing, they dubbed them with someone who could. They did this with Judy Kuhn in Pocahontas, and no one really even notices except the Disney nerds, but that singing is spectacular. And if they had found someone subpar and auto-tuned it, that movie would not be at the level that it's at. And that movie has a lot of problems. A lot of these movies have a lot of problems, but music is not one of them. And do
you want to do your object lesson?
Yeah.
Yeah. With Belle, she's done this for me, and it so clearly encapsulates the difference between the original and the remake. And by the way, Beauty and the Beast is one of those that we're both just like passionately hateful towards the remake.
No,
it's not just mediocre. It's not just a bland retread. It is like actively insulting. Yeah. And there's here. Go ahead.
Yes.
I wanted you to do your thing.
The thing is, I don't think Emma Watson was terrible as Belle, but they auto-tuned her, and it was very noticeable. So my thing is, I can tell when it's auto-tuned, and it's because it sounds robotic and expressionless. So I'm gonna like sit up so I have good posture here. But in the original, Paige O'Hara was on Broadway. And she just has this beautiful, rich tone. So when she sings, "Little town, it's a quiet village," there's warmth, there's vibrato. Now when Emma Watson sings it, because they had to auto-tune and pitch correct, it sounds like, "Little town, it's a quiet village." If you listen to it, there's some strange wobble to it. It just doesn't sound right. And so that's the thing. These songs are spectacular. They're so good. And so when they cast people who can't carry these beautiful songs, it makes me so sad. Because in my childhood, I feel like Disney movies taught me how to sing. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other little girls that grew up singing these songs. And so when you stick them in a movie with actors that just cannot carry them, and you refuse to dub them thinking technology can make up for that, it just ruins the soul of the movie. And when Belle sings, "I want adventure in the great wide somewhere," it needs to be swelling and spectacular and rich and beautiful. And I honestly don't even remember that moment in the remake. That's how forgettable her singing was. It's not her fault either.
No.
Not every actress can sing. They could have cast someone that could sing, or they could have found an actress to do the singing parts. That's fine. That's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but they chose in a lot of these movies to just go for subpar singing.
What's that like opera singer that they got in Beauty and the Beast, and she got to sing like she got to sing
Audra
like
McDonald.
Audra McDonald. She got to sing like one thing,
Mm-hmm.
and she was the armoire or the
Yeah,
chest
something
or whatever,
like that.
and
Or
she gets to be that, but it was super over the top and
Mhm.
goofy.
Yeah.
And you're just
yeah.
like, wow, look what you had right in front of you. I mean,
Yeah.
not that she would
Uh-huh.
necessarily make a Belle, but she could have certainly done the
Yeah.
singing voice.
Yeah.
At least.
Oh yeah.
But
And-
again,
yeah.
if you're going to, it's tricky because you do want it to stand out from the original in some ways.
Yeah.
But again, you keep making us think about how much better the original is. And I've heard people say that there's some sort of sly, like, hey, we want people to recognize how great these originals are. So we're going to give them this lifeless thing to look at and go, wow, wasn't it so much better before? But again, the classics should be able to stand on their own. And I think when you're talking about music, we've talked about the most egregious example. I think our favorite Disney song is "Be Prepared" from The Lion King.
Yes. Oh my
And
God.
I mean, Jeremy Irons and
Jim Cummings.
Jim
filled
Cummings
in.
dubbed some of the
He was
original.
so hardcore, he threw out his voice halfway through the song. So
Yeah,
if you
Jeremy
notice
Irons
there's a
did.
shift, it's because Jim Cummings, who does like a ton of Disney voices, stepped in.
Well,
and did
just
it.
one of the best Disney songs ever, both animation wise, singing wise, just spectacular. Best villain song for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And is it Chiwetel Ejiofor? Is that who did it in the new one?
Be
prepared! He's just like shouting it, and it's like 10 seconds long. And you're like, well, you might as well have just completely cut that song out, or you might have made a new song or something that fits the actor's voice. Because the way that they do that is so insultingly lazy.
Yeah.
Just, and it's like you spent so much money on this photorealistic animation, but then, you know what I mean? And I think to me the problem is that, hey, let's get this budget, let's get these special effects, let's get these actors, let's have this grand sort of vision for what we're going to do, but then your script is not good. And again, it all comes back down to script. Like you sort of feel like, hey, there's all these people working on this. I was talking about that with Don't Worry Darling, which is a recent movie that came out, and such an amazing film on so many levels, except for the basic story and script, which kind of failed it. And it's like, it's a bummer that you have all these great people working on this. You think about all these animators, meticulously making these lions look realistic, when making them look realistic, it's cool for like a little nature documentary, or like not even a documentary. You might as well just shoot real lions.
Yeah.
But like, I don't even know what you would use it for, like a tech demo or something.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, if you're gonna have characters and emotions, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. And the only reason that it worked in Jungle Book is because I think those characters were a little more cartoony, and also you had an actor that really knew how to act beside and alongside the CG characters, and I think that was really effective. And that movie deservedly won an Oscar for visual effects. So I think if you're just trying to show off your visuals, you could do worse. But gosh, it sure is a lot to sit through just see some pretty things.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
definitely. I mean, it looked amazing, but
It did.
I honestly don't remember any of the performances. And the extra song they put in there for Beyonce, why didn't they just use the one from the stage show? Oh my gosh, Shadowlands is the best song in the stage show. And they didn't do it, and it like gives me goosebumps every time, because that haunting melody that's in the score gets a place in a song. So if you haven't heard Shadowlands, go listen to that right now. It's amazing. So why didn't they do that? They put this weird syncretistic Beyonce song in that I just wasn't a fan of.
Yeah.
And
because then they can
yeah.
say we have a new Beyonce song in this Lion King,
right?
because that's what you want to see Lion King for.
Yeah. You know, but I do have to say that not all the sequels got it completely wrong, because there were some things about Aladdin that I loved.
You mean remakes?
Yeah, sequels. I don't know why my brain does that, but the Aladdin remake was actually like pretty good. It was really enjoyable. The casting for Aladdin was good. You could tell there was a little auto tuning, but overall he could sing pretty well. And Naomi Scott was amazing. And they gave her a new song that Pasek, and what's the other guy's name?
Ben Paul,
yeah,
or Justin Paul.
Yeah, that song was really good.
Guys that did Greatest Showman,
Yeah.
La La Land. I think they did songs for Lyle Lyle Crocodile, which just came out. But yeah,
so that song was really wonderful.
And Dear Evan Hansen.
And they took cues from the stage show for that, because she in the stage show.
Yeah,
actually,
we saw the stage show.
Yeah, she actually wants to be Sultan. And so it was something different and interesting, and she got a song, and that song was actually a really powerful moment. And that's a way to do a new song right, a way to do casting right. I mean, Will Smith, there's some auto-tuning there that's a little painful, but overall he did an okay job.
Well, but the thing about Will Smith is that Robin Williams, you know, you can't replicate Robin Williams, but at the same time, Robin Williams is not a singer. And that, you know, A Friend Like Me is not a well-sung song. It's well acted, well performed, it's funny.
It's fun.
I think there was some improvisation for sure. And so I think Will Smith does a pretty good job, even though he is technically a musician, he's a rapper. But I think that was an example of, you know, sort of switching lanes. Okay, funny guy who doesn't sing very well but performs well. Here's another funny guy who doesn't sing super well but performs well. That's fine if you're going to do that lateral move. You know, even though Robin Williams was so iconic in that role, of course you're going to again negatively compare him. But I do feel like he doesn't. It's not a huge come down. And I also think that the visual effects of the genie are really good.
Yeah.
And in general, the visual effects are really good. And I do think that they added some funny, occasionally awkward, either on purpose or accident, dialogue and scenarios, like the thing with the jams.
Oh yeah, that was great.
You know, it's funny. And again, is it good writing, or am I just laughing at it because it's awkward? I don't care, but I'm enjoying myself either way.
I think I've rewatched that one, and that's one of the few remakes I've actually wanted to sit down and watch again.
Yeah.
Most of the time you see one and you're like, okay, I can see a couple good things about this, but like,
I would still rather see the original.
And you know, honestly, there has been an effort in some of these movies to fix some of the problems with the older ones. But the thing is, a lot of these movies now have the disclaimer about outdated cultural stereotypes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, parents should never use animated or PG or G movies as babysitting for their children. And so it's not that these movies with these problems are necessarily like, you can't watch them. I mean, Little Mermaid, ooh, she's 16. Like, okay, there's some like, you know, not the best example actually.
Curious to see how that one turns out.
Yeah, I'm really
year.
curious. But you have to be willing, as if you're a parent, to actually sit down with your kid the first time they watch it and say, what did you think of what she did here? Was this a good decision to do this? And what did you like about her? What do you think is a good example? What do you think is a bad example? And I think a lot of parents get upset by some of the things in modern animated movies that, you know, that are now being added, but they don't consider the fact that they maybe wanted to with impunity just sit their kids down in front of a TV without having to engage. And I never think whether it's a remake that is being made to try to solve some problems in the original or not, there should never just be a parent just saying, here, go watch this. Like, there should be an effort, if there are problems with these movies, to actually talk about those problems instead of just trying to fix them and then kind of put the older one on the shelf, which is still a better movie.
Well, and I think that there's a generational conversation about, like, if you go back to something like Dumbo or Pinocchio, right? You might be surprised at how dark those movies are. There's, you know, both of those movies have smoking and alcohol in them, or at least for sure Dumbo has alcohol. For sure Pinocchio has smoking, right? And so it's a bad example to set to kids or whatever. Well, smoking wasn't frowned upon in the 1940s the way it is today. But beyond that too, there wasn't this. We didn't have televisions, right? There wasn't this concept of the cartoon is here to babysit your kid. families would have gone to see those movies together.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so I think there would have naturally been a conversation piece to that, you know, and, you know, when it comes to something like, Dumbo, yeah, I mean, yeah, the racism is very prevalent, but I applaud Disney for not, although I think they did that with Peter Pan. I think they cut out the Red Man song, which, you know, I'm not going to say that was an incorrect choice, but I appreciate that they're saying, hey, this is the original. It's still considered a classic, even if it's tarnished by this thing. We're just going to tell you it's a disclaimer. And I feel like today, when they remake them, there's this desire to, again, you don't want problematic racial content, problematic sexual politics, gender politics in, you know, you don't want those in your modern Disney movies. But also, I feel like there's a, you know, like in Pinocchio, it's like, okay, now they're smashing clocks at Pleasure Island.
Clocks of all the other Disney movies.
That's the worst thing a kid can do is smash clocks, you know. And in the original, there was this consequence of, like, you know, you're smoking and drinking, you're gonna get turned, you know, like freaking kids out over sinful behavior, or like causing mischief, like terrifying children into obeying their parents. I mean, that's old-fashioned morals right there, and it works really well. And I don't think any kid is like, oh, I wish I could go smash a bunch of clocks. So again, you're attempting the same message, but you're doing it in a way that's going to keep everybody safe and happy. Ironically, these PG remakes and when the G-rated originals, of course, those categories mean different things than they did, you know, decades ago. But, you know, these G-rated ones require more parental guidance than the new ones, which are kind of soft and you know, the edges are kind of sanded down to make them inoffensive.
Oh yeah.
But it's interesting because I was going to ask you about, like, hey, let's talk about some of them that actually work, or at least work on some level. And I totally agree with you about Aladdin. I think that they captured the sense of fun. Some people might totally disagree. They might say it's just totally awful. And some people might like Beauty and the Beast as a remake, and they have their own reasons. You know, it comes down to opinions.
Yep.
I don't think I've heard anybody who's like, yeah, I really love Lion King. Like, it's on par with the original. Like that's one that's just pretty. But, you know, I think
Jungle Book, though.
Jungle Book. Well, the thing about Jungle Book,
yeah.
and also Pete's Dragon, and a few others, is that there's the original is not exactly considered a masterpiece, right? So you have some room to reinterpret, to revitalize, to re-envision, to kind of shake it up a little bit, maybe tell the same basic story, still have reverence for the original, but to do it in a way where, because I don't think a lot of people are going to be super mad that they changed around Jungle Book. You know what I mean? It's just not, you know, it's a 3-star Disney cartoon, not a 4-star Disney cartoon, right? So it's good, but it's not great. And so same thing with Pete's Dragon. I mean, there's a lot you could do with that concept, and they went ahead and gave it a shot.
Yeah.
Cinderella. Cinderella's considered a classic.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, I mean the original.
Oh yeah, but the original.
I don't know if you'd put it on the same level as, say, Pinocchio or Snow White. Maybe, maybe you would.
And the original, you know, the animation, there's some cool things in the animation, but, you know, the problem, again, like, that they kind of address, they at least get to know each other a little bit before the, like, you know, ball scene, so it's not just like a stranger. You know, they're trying to address some of those
exactly,
things.
because you watch those original, even you go back and watch it, you're like, why do they like each other? Because they're pretty, and the story demands it, right?
Yep.
Pretty people end up together.
Yeah, but, you know, what I think they nailed in Cinderella is the sweetness of the character, like the message of being kind. I actually, I would say it's something I would rewatch. It's not something I would rewatch as readily as the Aladdin remake, but it's rewatchable for sure. And I think that comes down to some of the performances that are pretty good. You know, I think that I think that Helena Bonham Carter, I'm pretty sure she played this fairy godmother.
She's always good.
I think that was her. She was really creepy and kind of gross, and I didn't like that choice to go there. With that character, I kind of like the whimsy of the original fairy godmother.
She only plays creepy, gross people.
She does, yeah. That's well, Enola Holmes. Maybe she won't be creepy and gross, but anyway, that was the part of it that I wasn't as big a fan of. Probably because when I was 7 and I went for Halloween, I did not want to be Cinderella. I wanted to be the fairy godmother because, like, she made people's dreams come true.
She had all the power.
Yeah, she made the dreams come true.
Right,
so, like, don't mess with my fairy godmother, okay? But
what about the gender swapped one in that Amazon Cinderella?
Oh,
Billy Porter or whatever.
oh,
Yeah.
Man.
Let's not go on that. Let's not go on that.
There's
road.
a lot of rabbit trails we can go on. But the other thing is that, it's interesting because some of these, they've chosen not to even remake it at all. They've chosen to do like a revisionist history of the villain. And those are really kind of a strange choice. Like Maleficent, where they're like, oh, the true love was actually Maleficent. Like she loved her. Like it was really it was a strange choice. And then all the death and Mistress of Evil, like the body count in that movie was nuts.
Well, I think that there's a that's one of those ones that could have and should have worked. Production design was great. It had a dark, brooding tone to it. I was excited about it. I remember the trailer was really cool. Really cool. It was a good trailer. And the movie was so insultingly dumb. The characters make some of the worst decisions. And it's like, if you're going to do a revisionist thing like that, like, don't do it like that. I do feel like Cruella was much better.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed the heck out of Cruella. I think that movie is actually genuinely pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know that 101 Dalmatians is considered a classic Disney film or some kind of masterpiece. Now, I do think that the way that they tell her revisionist story is kind of falls apart if you think about it too much.
Yeah, it's not really you can't imagine it being a prequel for the regular.
The actual
she wouldn't make a clone out of puppies. That's not who she really was. So.
Well, and I think too that it's one of those movies that if you can just that one a little more, you can look at it as just a fun kind of like caper fashion, Devil Wears Prada style.
The costumes.
And I think if you look at it like that and not as a Dalmatians or a Cruella de Vil, like they're doing a different version of the character than the one from the animated film, that's fine. And I think it works fine. If you think of it as like this is supposed to be the same version of the character, it's not good.
Yeah.
But I thought it was great. It was like a PG-13, so it was a little bit edgy. Not really a movie for kids.
Yeah.
That's probably why I liked it.
Oh, yeah.
But, I do think that it's funny because I wanted to ask you about, like, so you have maybe your favorite Disney remake, which is probably Cruella and Aladdin are the two that I would rewatch probably. I don't know if there are any others. I'd have to go back a ways. Jungle Book.
Mulan,
maybe Mulan. And the thing Mulan, I do like that they it was a PG-13, so a little edgier, and they put it in it was a beautiful martial arts epic, right? Now we could talk about that particular character change that they're doing in a lot of these remakes, but I wanted to know what's your like guilty pleasure Disney remake or reimagining. Mine would probably be Mistress of Evil. The second Cruella movie. The first one is the second Maleficent movie.
Yeah.
The first one is pretty much unwatchable. But the second one is so bonkers. It's every bit as dumb and stupid. But just that they have this massive battle and just like all these fairy characters like getting murdered and like it's brutal. And it is quite the spectacle, and I have no idea why they thought they should put that in a kids movie, because the movie is it's dark one scene and then it's light and we got all these whimsical characters and then they're all gonna die, and it's crazy. It's crazy. It's bad, but it's crazy in a good way. Like I would watch it again just to like marvel at what the heck they were trying to do with that one. But do you have like what would be your guilty? Would you agree with that? Or
I would say it's kind of a strange choice, but the camp value of the original 101 Dalmatians remake with Glenn Close.
Oh yeah,
I kind of want to watch it again.
You got to go back a ways.
I gotta go watch that
because you go kind of like to the modern day stuff, but that was one of the first ones.
Yeah,
I think there was also a Jungle Book.
Yeah, the Jungle
in
Book
the 90s.
one. Yeah, with ironically Jason Scott Lee, who played the guy in Lilo and Stitch, and then he was the villain, officially the villain in Mulan. Anyway, he's been in
the new Mulan. Yeah, that's right.
It's kind of funny.
In the remake.
But yeah, like that would be the one I would say I have the most fond memories of as a kid, is that original 101 Dalmatians
That was
remake.
fun, and Glenn Close was very good.
Perfect
in
that. That's like, and it's super campy, super dumb, but like I think they kind of nailed what they were trying to do.
Oh yeah, totally.
So
yeah, I would be interested in rewatching that. Like again, is it good? But is it fun? That's the thing. A lot of these ones they're not even fun. They're They're just bland, and they're like,
Yeah.
I would rather a movie take more risks and
Mm-hmm.
and even risk alienating the audience that like the original, instead of just keeping it bland and
Mm-hmm.
safe. And it seems like with something like Cruella, they're going out of their way to do that a little more.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And even something like Lightyear, that's another conversation. But all the ways in which that movie uniquely fails, at least they tried to do something, do some kind of a little bit of a revisionist history. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think that the real thing is that if they're trying to remake it and they're trying to be in some way true to the heart of the original, they really misunderstood what the motivations of their characters were. And like with Mulan, like, I mean, I like that they tried to do something different with the martial arts thing, but she had no personality at all.
No arc, no character arc.
She was just like, this is something that Doug Walker, who does Nostalgia Critic, mentioned. She's just like perfect from the outset, and she has no growth and no anything. And the original, I just think the character's arc and struggle is so relatable, just feeling like you can't figure out where you fit, and then she's having to fight to stay there even though she doesn't want to be there, but she knows her dad's life is at stake and maybe even her own if she's discovered. And so I just really think that her struggle at the core is what makes the movie so compelling. She's intelligent, and she ends up being successful at something that she really, like, it didn't seem like she was going to be. And and I really like it. I mean, people talk about Mushu and how they don't like him or whatever, but I mean, he did the like
a lot of people actually do like
sidekick
Mushu
shtick before he did it in Shrek. So I mean, Phil Vischer said something about like it's basically Donkey and it's Mushu. So he did the same character in Shrek that he already did in Mulan.
He just got to say slightly more PG swear words. But I think that I do think that it is. Is it called Mary? I think it's called like a Mary Sue or something.
Oh,
like people say that about what's her name from the Star Wars movies, Daisy Ridley's.
Oh, Rey.
Rey, yeah. Like I think that's the term for it. It's basically like a female superhero. Like a Mary Sue is like, or it's someone who magically all the doors open for them to accomplish their goals, right? And so that this idea that I'm not exactly sure if I'm describing a Mary Sue correctly, but from what I think I know about it, there is that element in something like Mulan and some of these other ones where the flaws are kind of sanded away from these female characters in the name of probably like feminism and empowerment. Women can do whatever they want. But what makes Mulan so good is that she's bad at it, and she's awkward, and she has to grow into that role, and she has to learn lessons. Pinocchio has to learn lessons. He has to do the wrong thing before he can do the right thing. And he doesn't even smash the clocks. He just says, I don't want to do that, right? Where in the original, he gave into the temptation, and that resulted in him having to, like, you know, get forgiveness, have the conscience actually be his guide. And I think that when you sand away the rough edges of these characters, you're doing them a huge disservice. And so Mermaid will be an interesting litmus test because there are some problems with that original story that need to be addressed. And so you want to make it not creepy, not vaguely non-consensual. You don't want to take away her voice literally at the expense of, you know, her autonomy in the story and her agency. But there's got to be a way to do that right. And based on their track record, I have mixed feelings as if that they're going to pull that off. But I'm always interested to see them try. Like, I'm not going to go, oh, God, they're remaking that. It's going to automatically be terrible. I think you have a handful of examples where it's not terrible. I still want a Hunchback of Notre Dame, but I want they made a stage version, I don't think it ran very long, but they made a stage version that was more in line with Victor Hugo's original story, and it was, like, dark and adult. I'm like, and actually the animated film is pretty dang dark and adult. Oh my gosh. And I mean, that's one of my favorites, which is like, that's why I'm like, would be a little concerned about it. But I think you could pull that off. That I would say that's what, this is an interesting, why don't we answer the question? If there were a Disney film to be remade, which one would you like to see remade and why? And I think I just explained why I want to see Hunchback. But do you have a particular, like, one that hasn't been made yet that you would either really like to see a remake of, or at least not be like horribly what's the word?
I'm looking at the show.
you wouldn't horribly object to it.
Maybe Tarzan. I was just thinking about how much I loved it. I don't know, figure out how to like do the score in a way it keeps the heart of the original. Doesn't have to be musical even, kind of like whether you take Phil Collins songs and you have a little bit more modern spin or just leave them in there.
So much.
The songs are so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be interesting because what they did, Glenn Keane's animation and the pioneering of having the 2D on the 3D, I think it could be really spectacular.
Surfing the trees, too.
Yeah, it
Such
could
a
be really
great
spectacular. But the
concept.
original is so perfect, except for maybe Turk's character. Rosie O'Donnell's a little grating, but...
Well, and I think the problem with that, too, the problem with something like Tarzan is that there are so many versions out there.
Mm-hmm.
There was The Legend of
Yeah,
Tarzan
I'm
with,
looking at the shop right
what's his name? Can't think of his name right now, and Margot Robbie was in that one,
Oh,
and Samuel
yeah.
L. Jackson.
Yep.
And that movie, again, big budget, looked great,
Mm-hmm.
completely forgettable. The second it
Yeah.
was over, I was
Yeah.
like, meh, totally forgot Skarsgård, Alexander Skarsgård,
Yes.
that was the one. So I think that
Yeah, I'm thinking...
you have so many versions of that story, and that's the trick with that one, is that there are, or that really crazy one from the 80s that we watched.
Yeah, like Greystroke or whatever.
Greystroke.
Yeah, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it was so violent.
Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes, definitely an underrated, weird, cult classic movie. But, and then you have stuff like George the Jungle. So I see where you're coming from. I think that would be a very unique challenge. How are you supposed to remake the Disney version without it feeling too much like one of the other dozen versions? When you have a classic story like that, it's not just that the Disney version is... I think with Pinocchio, the Disney version is kind of law, so to speak. Although Guillermo del Toro, stop motion animated, coming out pretty soon. I'm pretty stoked for that. But I think that, no, that's an interesting choice for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. That was just what popped out at me. I mean, I'm wearing a Tangled shirt, but like, do I want them to remake Tangled? No, I do not. It is perfect. But the cartoon series I also love, although it's too much filler. But what was I going to say? So I think what you're talking about with the characters that are just perfect already. It's actually a horrible role model for young girls because they already feel like they, a lot of them don't feel comfortable in their own skin, and they don't, so I think that the arcs like Mulan, where she doesn't feel like she fits and she sings that song Reflection, or Just Around the River Bend in Pocahontas, where she's wanting more and she feels like she doesn't fit. There's so many female characters who are struggling to find their place.
Cinderella's like literally a slave.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Basically.
She's like abused. And Tangled, she's abused. She's, she has to break through the trauma of having been captive and start to be in the outside world. And in the cartoon series, you actually see her come into her own as royalty. And I love that part of it. So what I'm saying, though, is that in these sequels, you don't really see as much character growth in these women. And girls need that. And I needed that. These movies mean so much to me because I think that they helped me to step into who I needed to be in a way. Right. To look at who I am, and maybe in spite of the ways that in my own abuse and trauma, there were things that were told to me, and there was this hopelessness of I was never going to find my place. These movies were at least one voice saying, no, who you are is good. These longings that are deep in you to do something good and meaningful in the world, and to get out there in the world, and that they're not bad and you're not bad.
Your flaws are strengths.
Yeah.
In some ways, your flaws are strengths that can be used to overcome and can be used as part of your story. And I think that's such a beautiful, gospel centered message. Yeah. In some ways.
Definitely. And these characters that, they have to depend on other people to help them. Like, none of these characters do it in isolation. And the sidekicks, as much as the sidekick is a trope, I mean, it's an interesting commentary on needing that support, needing other people to draw these women out and help them to accomplish the things they needed to accomplish.
When was Jiminy Cricket actually poke Pinocchio's conscience in the new one? Didn't he just get like trapped in a bottle? He wasn't even with him at Pleasure Island, as far as I remember.
Right? Yeah.
Like, so what's the point of having him say that he's his conscience in like this throwaway line, but he never actually gives him advice?
Gosh, seriously.
Yeah, man. That was a misfire for sure. Anyway.
But I mean, I think so. At the heart of it, it's like that these remakes are missing out on a chance to have complex characters that then can be a part of a conversation with parents about what did you like about them, what mistakes did they make, how did they grow, and you can use it to describe that because our souls speak in the language of story. And so that's why these fairy tales are so, they're like, they have levels of metaphor. Like Tangled for me is like a metaphor of like coming out of trauma in some ways. She's been trapped, she's been lied to and told that she can't make it out there and she's too weak, and then she finds out she's really actually strong and that she has a royal identity. You know, you look at even movies that maybe at an objective story level are kind of bad, but you can look at like Sleeping Beauty being, you know, like everyone being under the spell and needing to be awakened and rescued and restored and the kingdom restored. And there's these metaphorical underpinnings to these fairy tales that are what we long for. Like Tolkien writes about it On Fairy Stories. And so I just think that these remakes, when they don't seek to really be true to not only the story but the characters and the motivations and the messages, that there's just kind of a sense of it's all over the place. It's like they didn't refine what they were doing, they just got it out into the world without thoughtfulness.
Well, and I think that ironically the characters that grow the most are the villains. You know, I think that the ones that have the most interesting arcs, Maleficent and Cruella, like you can see a character growth, but it's not necessarily, these aren't characters you want young girls to emulate.
Oh yeah. That's
because you know that they're bad. I mean, well, Maleficent is a little more sympathetic than Cruella. I think she at least retains some of her edge. Maleficent, they basically make into a good guy, a good gal by the second one, and that's just weird and uncomfortable because it's a villain. Yeah. You don't want villains to be good. You want them to be bad. Like that's
well, that's an arc that's been done with Megamind really well in other like random animated movies. And Despicable Me. I mean,
Disney doesn't want anybody to do it better, but in some cases they do it better,
way better.
Thanks DreamWorks
like
and
redemptive arcs for
DreamWorks
villains.
and Illumination for showing that we can.
Spider-Man redemptive arc for villains, really good.
Oh, you talking about No Way Home?
No Way Home, yeah.
Heck yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, I mean, so this is kind of, we've talked about a lot of these different things. So I mean, is there anything we haven't mentioned?
No, I think we hit all of the. I think this is probably before the video runs super duper long. I think that we've kind of gone over what works, what doesn't work, what our hopes are for the future. We've talked about our favorites, our least favorites, our guilty pleasures, and we've talked about ones we might like to see in the future. So I'm not going to say Disney, keep doing what you're doing, because I don't like what you're doing. But hey, if you're going to keep doing it, hire the right people. Yeah. I mean, hire a Tony Gilroy, he's the showrunner for Andor, or hire a Jon Favreau, but not the Lion King Favreau, the Mandalorian Favreau.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And let them do something creative. Hire people with a vision instead of just saying, we're going to do this one next. Like, find people who are like, hey, I am passionate about this particular story for these personal reasons. I'm going to bring heart and soul into this. And I think maybe that's why the originals were so good, is because Glenn Keane is a believer, and when he poured his own soul into the beast, you see a character who sees his like brokenness and broken form and wants to be made whole and restored. And he even talks about how Ariel is someone longing for a different world where she can't even breathe the air, like she can't even live there, but she's longing for a different world. And so you look at these characters and you see that Glenn Keane understood that as a lead animator, there was something deep and powerful about it. And in fact, on one of the frames of animation for the Beast, he wrote 2 Corinthians 5:17 about like, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. Yeah. And so you have these people, and there are believers there who are passionate about these products. Glenn Keane actually based Rapunzel before he stepped down from that movie on his artist daughter Claire. And so you see these people who it was intensely personal for them. Yeah. And when they made these originals, they meant something. Right. And so if we can find people who are pioneering new techniques like the multiplane camera in Pinocchio and are creating characters that mean something to them, I think that's what we're missing. We're missing vision, and we're missing that. And so there's all these talented people that work on these films. I don't want to eliminate it all. The animators who did excellent work for what they were given, and the costume designers, and even the actors who were hired to play a role and they were given certain direction, or the directors who were told to make a certain movie. I mean, it's none of these people's fault, but I think at the heart of it, what needs to happen is there needs to be a vision for this movie that is not just, I'm going to remake this next, but I'm going to remake this for this reason. I'm going to fix these problems, but I'm also going to understand why the original has such power.
Yeah, but I think it's hard to do. You're basically, it's secondhand passion, right?
Yeah.
Because someone else has already created these characters, and you're going back. And again, not that you can't do a remake with passion or a reimagining with passion, but it's that much harder. And I think that there's kind of a sort of a veil in front of that. That's sort of hard to, because what you're looking at the original. You're saying, wow, look at this person, and they were so passionate about that. You know, I want to recreate or, you know, make a facsimile of that passion, but you're not creating it in a weird way.
Yeah,
so,
and there's a disconnect emotionally between the real emotional core of that story.
And again, I don't know how you get over that. I don't have advice for Disney other than do it better.
Yeah.
Or don't do it at all.
And understand why the original is
options.
great. I feel like that's, you know, Aladdin, it's a fun movie, and they made a fun movie, and I think, you know, and the characters, they gave it something different. They gave the characters even better growth and motivation, from original Jasmine being whiny to Jasmine actually being a woman of strength and vision who actually wanted to do something with her life, you know?
You have to you have to find the balance between, you know, if you hold the original as a sacred text, right? You're going to be beholden to that, and you're going to fail. If you throw it out completely and say we're going to do something completely different, well then why are you remaking this? What makes the story compelling in the first place? So you have to find that middle ground. And the middle ground is not, I'm going to do half reverent and half irreverent. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
So what's the, you know, I don't know, but that's what they need to figure out in order to like be consistently high quality if they're going to continue to do these remakes. So we'll see how Mermaid turns out, and we'll keep watching, even if we sometimes don't want to.
And hopefully there's a commitment to excellence. That's the other thing I want to say, is that like they can't just, you know, not do well in one area because the whole movie struggles. It's like it has a limp that way. Like the music in Beauty and the Beast was one of the issues with it, and they just were like, oh, it's good enough. I don't think that.
And the ghastly CGI.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They were terrifying. Yeah. Mrs. Potts was nightmare fuel. But to say that you know, these movies need to understand that you know, they can't just take a part of it that was so special and beautiful and just kind of sort of do it. They need to do it. The music, if the music is in there, it needs to be good. You know, if these characters are in there, they need to be good. And
not good enough.
Yeah,
not good
exactly.
enough.
And that doesn't mean they need to be perfectionistic, but with the things that are important in this movie, it's like it needs to actually, they need to nail that, because that's why Beauty and the Beast is so special, is the music. And so if they don't nail the music, they're missing the soul of these characters expressing their hearts, that I want song that Belle sings. So I hope that, you know, I've heard clips of Little Mermaid, that they can nail that they can actually take
She's got a good singing voice.
Yeah, respect the original source material in a way to honor it and make it beautiful and good.
Yeah.
So well, I guess we'll have to see what comes next, and hopefully they're learning how to do this. But I want to see original animated movies. I hope Strange World is good. I think that I'd rather that Disney make original content than that they create remakes.
Well, and the thing is,
that's what I want. I want good animated movies again. You know?
And the thing is that they have been very good. Both Raya and the Last Dragon and Encanto were spectacular.
Yeah, Encanto was so good.
They were really good. But they are, though. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
but let's make one or two more of those. Yeah. You know, but maybe we can have 3 or 4 of those a year.
Yeah.
And no remakes. I don't know. Obviously, and that's kind of the, you know, they said that about Pixar too. Like, you guys are falling back on your, you know, with Lightyear and stuff like that. And I would totally agree. Like, the original content is where it's at. It's harder. Yeah. But it's worth it.
It's riskier. And that's the thing. It's like these companies want the cash grab, unfortunately, and so they do the thing that is safe. And I just, you know, if you're gonna do the safe thing, at least do it well.
I gotta applaud Disney as much as we have, you know. I really like the Marvel shows and the Star Wars shows, all this stuff based off IP. They are still making original animated films. Yeah. So bravo to them for that. Yeah. Now I just want them to, I wish they could go back to doing some 2D.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
But if you're going to do 3D animation, I mean, their 3D animation is gorgeous.
Encanto looked amazing.
No question. Raya.
So yeah.
Some of those landscapes and man, really good. So yeah, there's some good stuff in there. All right.
So I think that's probably enough time. We spent almost an hour talking about this, but hopefully
we could probably spend another. But
I would love your thoughts. What, like the questions that Kyle asked me, what is your favorite remake? Which is a movie that you think would make a good remake? Which one is your least favorite?
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah, guilty pleasure. I would love to actually get some conversation in the comments. Hopefully, not too angry.
Maybe we'll get our horrifying Great Mouse Detective remake with photorealistic rats. Woo! That would be fun. That would be like Cats. That would be like a Cats level disaster.
A creepy mouse singing "Let Me Be Good to You."
Woo! Oh, with like the vague sensual undertones.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I forgot about that moment till just right now.
I am cringing in all the right ways. I would love the heck out of that.
Man.
Just terrify a whole generation of children.
Yes, that would be terrifying.
But seriously, don't touch Great Mouse Detective because it's great.
No.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks so much for watching. I hope that this brightened your day.
Thanks
and
for having me.
It was fun to hang out and chat with my husband and geek out on something we love.
We try and have a good time.
Yeah, we do. All right. Thanks so much for watching.
Bye.
Much love to you all. Bye.